If I Could Tell You Just One Thing is a brand new event industry podcast presented by me, Mel Noakes.
And me, Max Fellows.
It's a podcast from Elevate, where industry leaders write a letter to their younger self.
And they consider what wise words of advice they would give themselves now if only they could.
Our discussion is based on this letter.
Be prepared for refreshingly honest conversation and wise words of wisdom. Our next guest is Shannie Mears, co-founder and head of talent at London-based creative agency The Elephant Room. She's a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts, former government advisor, Adweek Future Female and 2023 Forbes 30 Under 30. Formerly at GUAP, as brand and talent manager, she created the Blacklist, a list of 30 under 30 black creatives and professionals across the creative industry, is now in its 6th year, and a former lecturer at Kingston University. Shannie is a born entrepreneur. Her ability to build, connect and develop relationships with young people from the wider creative industry drives the Elephant Room's talent network beyond any traditional agency's reach. Shannie is a window into a completely untapped generation and a bridge between opportunity and people. She tries to find those people that are hungry and passionate from the spaces and places the industry doesn't usually look. She says that's where the gems are. Shannie says her story could be that of so many other people's success story if someone just took a chance on them. And that's why she's the perfect guest for this podcast. Thank you so much for joining Mel and I on the sofa.
Thank you for having me.
Amazing. Love you to start by introducing yourself. Name, place, where do you come from?
Yep, so my name's Shannie. I am 29 years old. I'm from Birmingham and originally from Birmingham, but now live in London. I run a creative agency that I co-founded when I was 23 with my mentor called Dan Saxby, and that's called The Elephant Room. I'm also a former dancer, which people know but kind of don't know. So I feel like that's important to say. And I grew up in the arts, so I'm really into like sort of the performing arts, like music, theatre, film, that kind of stuff. But now I feel like I've taken a different turn into much more the sort of marketing space, advertising space, which is still cool because you can use your interest in that space, but I'm not performing anymore. And I'm one of 4. And my dad died when I was 4. But I'm the youngest in the family and I have 3 nephews who I love dearly and currently pregnant.
Just a little bit going on then.
Yeah.
One of the things that comes through your letter and one of the things that Max and I have watched with a lot of interest is the work that you do, in particular around the Elephant Room and the way that you support a lot of young talent coming through the industry and the work you've done around 1 Month Mentors and so many of those spaces. And from your letter, it looks like supporting others has been quite a theme that's run through your life. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like from a young age, I was always really encouraged to sort of speak my mind, like, at school, like school council and prefect and head girl and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like at the time when I was like young growing up, I didn't really look at it as like something I could necessarily like tap into as a career, or even I didn't even look at it as a thing that people would clock onto as me as a character. I just thought it was just something I was doing because I enjoyed it, or I was just giving my opinion because somebody asked. But then I think when I stepped into the advertising space and initially started my internship, I realised actually how much insight and cultural value it is to sort of say your opinion and to sort of I suppose bring a lot of yourself to the table. And initially it started off like that. And then when I did that, I realised, oh my gosh, there's so many other people like myself that don't even know where to start when it comes to entering the industry, or don't even know how to articulate what it is they want from the industry and stuff like that. And then I suppose I just became not necessarily a voice, but I definitely became quite more invested in helping people discover what that looks like. And particularly when it comes to like access. So looking at routes of how do people even apply for a job? What does a real good CV look like? Or if I can't write a CV, how do I get the attention of somebody else? Like, how am I building my portfolio, etc.? And I think I just sort of fell into that space of like really wanting to give. And really wanting to help people understand that it's not you. Like, it's just really hard. So you can tap into the ways of who you are and still not necessarily have to compromise yourself. Because I think a lot of the time, I talk to like a lot of my friends or young people, and they'll be like, oh, I think I have to be a certain way on LinkedIn to get noticed, or I think I have to use this type of language in my CV to make sure that that person reads it. But my advice to them is always like, no, you actually don't. You have to just be your absolute self, and you have to share the things that you like, talk about the things that you like, and that's what will make you stand out. And I think the more I did that, the more that gave me ideas to do stuff like 1 month mentors, the more that to start the communities that I've done. When I first moved here, I started an event series called Girls Let's Talk, and that was all about just bringing like women together and being like-minded and sharing ideas and stuff like that. And I think all of that has just literally come from, I think, when I was young, but I've now, like, I suppose, formulated it into a way where it actually works for me as well, like in my career. Like, not only like giving it, obviously it's a nice to do thing, but you can actually also tap into like skills and the ways in which you can help people and stuff.
Almost like a bit of an ecosystem then,
Yeah,
in terms of people through it. So where you're saying about it and completely value that in terms of that confidence and seeing, you know, you expressing yourself and having the confidence, and it's the confidence piece for me. At what point did you have the confidence to go, you know what, I can do it, or I'm doing it, I'm now in a position to help others? What was that tipping point, I suppose, from you doing it for yourself and thinking, right, you could just carry on doing it for yourself, to the point where actually I'm doing it well enough, or I'm confident enough in order to actually, I've got something, or I've gone through something to help others?
That's a good question. I think I'm actually not quite sure at what point it was, but I definitely know that after I completed my internship and Dan had said to me, let's start the Elephant Room, I think that gave me an immense amount of confidence, because it made me feel like, wow, like this person really believes in me, that I can do something that I've never done before, never stepped into that space before. And I think that empowerment that I felt from that mentorship and relationship that I had, that then gave me enough confidence to feel like, almost like, it's okay to fall, because I know that someone's going to have my back anyway. And then I think as we started, I learned so much, like, well, I'm still learning, to be honest, since we've been building the agency. And I think now I'm unafraid to fail, or to not necessarily get something completely right, because I know that actually there's people who I really respect that believe in me. And I think that then just gives me the confidence to instill that in others, because I feel like if you wait to be quote unquote perfect, it will just never happen or occur. But the confidence piece, I think it's kind of, to be honest, I feel like it turns on and off. I think I always say, like, confidence is something for me that it occurs. Like, I'm not always confident, but actually I'm always comfortable. Like, I've never tried to compromise myself. I've never changed how I speak, dress, show up. And being 100% comfortable in myself has allowed me to then be confident. And sometimes I don't feel confident, whether that be I'm just having a bad day, or I'm not prepared for this meeting that I've been told I was going to happen 2 days ago. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, but actually, because I know that I'm comfortable with myself and how I show up and everything I've done so far, it just allows me to tap into, again, that person of who I am and bringing my full self to the table. And I think that's also really important. But yeah, I'm not really sure when it actually like switched on, like, oh, I can do this, or I can help those people, or I can actually have that idea. But the one thing that I think has 100% empowered me is the relationship that I hold with Dan. Is like, that's really empowered me to sort of do what I want. It's always,
it's a really special thing. And it's funny because we obviously share a connection there, because I know Dan from my Iris days, but quite a few years before your Iris days.
Yeah.
But that, Iris in particular was a brilliant breeding ground and continues to be for talent and people spotting talent. But it's really interesting to me, that mentor-mentee relationship and the power of that to really propel you forward. And let's be clear here, you were in your early 20s when you set up this agency, having completed an internship.
Yeah, literally straight out of uni. Straight out of uni, completing a dance degree. And I'd done like a 2-month crash course almost in marketing. And then the way how it was set up, where there was 10 agencies that then had to pick who they wanted. Iris then picked me.
Very smart, Iris. Well done.
and then I was at Iris for 10 months, And after that, it was initially a 6-month internship. They had extended it because it felt almost cut short. So they were like, you know what, let's extend it and still see where we can give you a role. But I think the challenge is that because I was coming from a non sort of marketing background, it was hard to put me in a department per se, because my skill set necessarily wasn't an art director or an account manager or PR. I was still almost understanding what my skill set was. But during that process, over the course of the 10 months, that mentee-mentor relationship bloomed, and all the things that I did bring to the table, I suppose Dan was super curious about. And then after that, 10 months, he then offered me a job, and then I politely declined. But then a bit, because I felt like I still hadn't found what it was that I was gonna do. So although I felt like super, super grateful that they wanted to keep me, because that was the aim, I didn't actually know what the value would be of me, because I didn't fully feel like I found it. And because I was doing, I do quite a bit outside of work as well. And because I was doing that, I felt like, will I be able to bring all of that into work? Are they going to use me as much as I feel like I could be used? And I was thinking probably not. And not that that's any fault of theirs, but I just think the way the industry is naturally set up, when you're someone who's doing loads of different things, sometimes it's hard to let you do all those different things or be multifaceted in a space that has so much structure. And in this case, I didn't have a quote unquote direct skill set, so they couldn't necessarily just say, oh yeah, go and manage that client, because I didn't know how to do that yet. I didn't have that experience.
Didn't fit into the boxes that
exactly
they had.
So yeah, that's what I said.
It's incredibly brave. I mean, the idea being that you are of a group of people, you get selected, and the aim of that selection is to do work experience and get hired, you get the job or offer the job, and then you turn it away based on actually you still haven't at that point found exactly what you're after. Whereas actually I think the majority of people would think, right, well, I'll take the job whilst I do that perhaps, or just get in there. That confidence is something that came through in your letter, I suppose, but equally that what's the kind of the contrast to that was that kind of fear factor, fear of failing and things. And so you mentioned there about Dan quite a few times, things like that. I've met Dan as well, and he's a top guy. But it's only when you kind of connected with him properly that you had that confidence because of this safety net or otherwise and things like that.
Yeah.
What would you say up until that point, or even since then, in terms of this fear of failure and what have been the biggest failures that you've learned the most from in that process, or that's helped again fuel this confidence?
I think it's been a few things, to be honest. I think I learned quite a bit when I was at Iris, and I learned a lot about just managing structure, process, understanding language and presenting ideas and stuff like that. But I wouldn't say I had it in the bag. It was just something I became more aware of. But during my time at Iris, I was also, like I said, I started the event series Girls Let's Talk. I was also working with two of my best friends, Ibrahim and Jide at GUAP. And I was helping them build that at the time. And then I was also writing because I enjoy like sort of like blog writing, and I was writing for Afropunk at the time and also doing some work for GUAP. And I feel like when I was doing all of that, although I was learning loads, I feel like I was also doing a lot of things wrong. And not only did it obviously, I suppose you could say it was failure, but it helped me also then get to that decision of the point of where I said no to Dan, because I realized there's no way I can stay in this agency, feel good about it, knowing that I can't fully do what I want to do. And that was because I was writing, I was going to events, doing events, and I felt like I wasn't very good at all of them. And because I wasn't very good at all of them is because I wasn't focused to an extent. And I feel like not necessarily that was a mistake, but I feel like I'm someone who I want to take on a challenge and I don't say no to very many things. And at the time, I realized that actually, had I like maybe put more focus into one thing than another, or had I put my all into Iris, maybe I would have said yes. So that made me realize as well that it's not necessarily about failure, but actually effort is really important and focus is also really important. And that made me then realize actually if I am gonna develop a role for myself, and me and Dan had this conversation, I have to really focus on what is it that I'm gonna do, like how am I gonna really tap into that, which is when we just spoke about like, you know, like helping people and coming up with ideas around communities, and that's kind of where I feel like that was. But I also feel like prior to that, which was again, not very many people know this, I used to do dance, but I was doing a lot of events in Birmingham. And oh my gosh, like I got given like grants, spent all the money, don't even know where it went. like I literally couldn't tell you what I spent it on, lost money. There was one where like 4 people came, like it was like so bad. Like and when I think about that period, I was so sad. It was such a sad period for me because I was literally like, why is none of this working for me? Like, how have I applied for a grant and I don't even know where the money's gone? Like, I did a budget, like, where's it gone? Like, I had literally no idea of how to even handle £1,000, like at the time. And if I look back at that, I think I just didn't have the mentorship, the guidance, I wasn't well equipped at all with the sort of the people around me. Although people were encouraging, they didn't actually teach me anything. And I think I took a lot of that into sort of moving to London, because I realised, okay, I'm going to start again now. And I'm going to still be me, but I have all these learnings that I've done over here. I can't do that again, which is why I then tried all these other things and didn't say no. But again, I wasn't great at that either. And I think those were the sort of failures, but those were the failures that I felt like then made me, one, get to a decision where I feel like if I'm going to go into something, I need to know what it is that I'm going to do. But then also made me tap back into just myself, because I feel like a lot of my skill set isn't necessarily organising events or writing, or I can do those things, but that's not really me. Like if we're going to talk about what I really like to do, it's like building communities, like building out like ideas for how to get communities into a space, hence like the 1 month mentors and stuff like that. And I feel like I didn't know that at all had I not done all of those things before. And although I enjoy those things, I don't think they're things that I'd say like, yeah, I'm a writer, or do you know what I mean, or I'm an events organizer. Like I definitely would not describe myself as those things, but they're things that I can tap into, and I think I learned a lot in that process. So
well, without them, you wouldn't be where you are, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think pre-London, but then also during that process, I was doing a lot of stuff and just not fully focusing, but failing and learning and realizing, okay, this is what I want to do. Because I literally remember being one day so sad, and me and Dana took a trip. We had just left, and I literally said to him, I was like, I've got no skills. Like, I literally said to him, I was like,
all have days, right?
I said to him, I was like, I don't know what I'm good at. And he was like, what? He was like, what do you mean you don't know what you're good at? I was like, I don't know what I'm good at. Like, I don't know what my skill set is. Like, I just don't know what that is. And he was like, your skill set isn't something that you can, like, because I expected it to be like a visual, something I could bring to life through like writing or drawing or people handling or something like that. And he was like, your skill set isn't that. Your skill set is innate. It's in you. Like, it's how you come to the table and present an idea. It's the things that you formulate based on like where you come from and like your cultural insight and the way you think exactly. And I literally was like, is that skills? Like in my head, I was like, is that skills?
Can you put that on and see?
Yeah, like, do you know what I mean? But actually, I remember like a couple of years after that, him coming back to me saying, do you remember when you told me he had no skills? I was like, I actually do. And I fully do remember that day. Like, and he's just like, but you've seen how, you've seen now how that your skills comes to life. And he's right, now I see how it comes to life, but I genuinely had no idea and no sight of that at all when I was first starting out.
I've got a couple of questions linked to that actually, because I think there's something really beautiful about that journey of discovery and learning and figuring stuff out. And for somebody that's clearly multi-passionate and has got a broad interest in lots of cultural things, and you've mentioned some of the things you're involved in and still involved in, I guess that cultivation and that maturity to kind of get to a point of actually it's okay to learn. And part of this process is me growing, and it's not me going wrong, it's me figuring out where my space is in life. Because we see a lot, especially in maybe our younger members of Elevate, who are, I want to get there and I want to be this and I want to be a director in a year and I want to go here. And actually there's real beauty in that journey and that growth and taking time to figure out where you are. But my question linked to that is, for somebody that is still multi-passionate with so many different things, I mean, you've only got to look at your, I think we're calling it Twitter X now, are we? To see all the stuff you're involved in. How do you maintain that focus and that structure, if you like, to be so involved in so many things and add so much brilliance to so many things?
I think now the question I always ask myself when I'm doing something or if I agree to something is, does it align back to like sort of purpose? And it sounds so like cliche, but I feel like that's it. Like, remember I said before, I don't say no to a lot of stuff. Whereas I think in the past 2 years, I've definitely like been better at being much more intentional. And I think a lot of it is down to, is it valuable to myself? So can I genuinely look at that, what I've participated in or contributed to, and thought I've also learned something in an exchange? 2, like, how is it valuable? So how do I measure that? Like, is it something that's just going to make me feel good about myself because I've helped somebody? Or is it something that's going to support my career growth in terms of my profile? Or is it something that can contribute back to the business? Like, that's kind of how like I'd maybe look at that. And then like, I suppose this is kind of like a question I can't necessarily always answer on the spot, but is it going to make me happy like 3-4 years from now that I did it? And I think those really are the questions I ask myself based on that now. And if I look at all the different things that I'm doing, I can genuinely say in the past 2 years particularly, I'm really happy about that I participated or that I contributed to that. So, for example, like lecturing, like I'm really happy I decided to go and apply for that job or contribute to like the students that I did teach over the course of that 2 years. Or my time at GUAP, like that was such a great learning experience and journey. I made friends, like that was great for me. And when I was doing Girls Let's Talk, I decided to stop it. Am I happy that I stopped it? Yes, because actually that then gave me room to get involved with other things and other events with other women. I built a great community of women around me. So I'm still feeling the rewards of what that was. And I think that's kind of how I see that multi-passion that you just said, because I think I can still tap into different sides of the industry. So I can still be around music and fashion and that kind of space if I'm doing some work with GUAP, or I can still be amongst like a sort of education, academia if I'm doing my lecturing. And those are all things I'm more very passionate about, as well as obviously doing my day-to-day. But the one thing that I always say and always do, and me and Dan again have this conversation all the time, the elephant room for me is like it's just a part of me. So it's always going to be a priority. So everything I do, it doesn't compromise my ability to also be still a co-founder and head of talent at the elephant room. So I'm never necessarily like, I suppose, instead of doing that, I'm going to do this. It's actually a contribution to the value that I still bring to the agency. And that's also really important, because sometimes you kind of get that as well. Like you mentioned, the younger elevate people wanting to be a director. Like I had that kind of vision for myself, like when I was about 22, 23, thinking by this age, I'm going to be here. By 30, I'm going to be doing this. And if I don't be like literally, and now I'm just like, okay, first of all, what's going to make me happy? Because that's really important. But equally as well, like, what is it that I want to experience, and what does that look like? And it doesn't always look like what the director, it doesn't
what
always,
you thought of in
what you thought of it,
yeah.
exactly. It doesn't always look like that. And I think that's really important. So I think that's kind of how I sort of hold myself account to deciding what to do, and also making sure it's focused, that it always aligns back to a contribution of myself, but also never compromising what I'm already doing full time.
Do you say, or would you say, sorry, that there is one of those kind of values or those aspects that you pull it back to holds the most weight? Is there one that's more important than any of those others, or amongst those kind of deciding factors for you?
I think the compromise bit, does it compromise anything I'm doing at the elephant room? I think that holds a lot of weight. Like, I wouldn't do anything to compromise my, not necessarily time, but what I can give. And I think that's really important to me. I wouldn't necessarily say like it holds the most weight, but it's definitely something I think about first before I then ask my question, how does it make me feel, etc., etc. And I think it probably does hold the most weight to an extent, actually, because if it did compromise, I probably then wouldn't even consider it. So yeah, I think that question.
Do you think, and back to your letter, you mentioned, and you know, as Mel said, you know, these accolades, 30 under 30 with Forbes, and looking at it, and I'm like, got to step up a bit. But did you ever think when you were, you know, a teenager, or, you know, when you're well into dance, things like that, that's where you would be? Did you ever think that is where you could be? Whether it's had the vision or the aspiration?
Honestly, no. I don't think I even knew what Forbes was. but
Have you surprised yourself?
I've surprised myself to an extent, because I think as a child, in school, and in college, I was always quite ambitious. So I remember, and I was actually really into law at one point, and really into, I mentioned I was like school council. I was literally on every council board. Like, I was literally always debating something. My mum was like, surely you're gonna go into law,
Just
because
eat your dinner and you're debating
honestly,
it.
yeah, like there was always something. I was always writing something. I remember writing letters to my head teacher and about the girls' toilets and stuff like that. And I think that at that point, I genuinely thought I was gonna go into law. So I remember, in being in year 4, I'll never forget. I remember being in year 4, and my teacher asking the whole class, put your hand up if you're going to go to university. And I put my hand up and said, I'm going to Oxford.
Go girl.
First of all, I don't even know where I got that from, because I definitely didn't know what Oxford was. But I still remember saying that up until like year 8, like having this vision of me like going to like this Russell Group University. And again, I don't even know where I got that idea from, but I must have got it from somewhere. And I feel like I had always been quite ambitious. But I think when I think about actually how my life has actually panned out, I didn't think it would be this way. I didn't think I would still be able to be as creative as I am, or I didn't think I definitely was thinking a much more traditional route to being successful, because that's kind of how it was made and played out to me as a child, and again going into like school, college. So I think what I've surprised myself with is how much I've been able to just remain me, like, and still, like, I suppose, sit with the big boys or like get onto things like Forbes and be invited to like Downing Street, like all that kind of stuff. I didn't think I would be able to do as me. I thought that I'd probably be a lawyer doing it or something like that. But I didn't even know people in the creative industry did stuff like that or got involved in politics or social politics or anything like that. But so I've definitely surprised myself in that aspect for sure.
Have you stepped forward into those things? So lecturing, as you're mentioning in your letter as well, the Forbes thing, you know, have they found you, or have you kind of stepped forward and put yourself out there for them? I
would say a bit of both. I'd say Forbes, I applied. So that definitely was self-nomination. And that was twice actually. So I got Forbes this year and I applied last year as well and I didn't get it. So, and I just went again because I was like, nah, there's no way. I'm having it. I was like, there's no way, not in a quote unquote big-headed way, but I was like, I know my accolades at this point now. So I was like, surely I can get Forbes because I can do this. Like, so I just went again and
love that.
And I did that. But things like Adweek, Future Female and stuff, they all found me, I suppose. Like that was like my approach. Dan puts me forward for a lot of stuff as well.
Dan.
The incredible weight that a champion has, right? Having someone in your corner, everyone needs a Dan, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I always say, like that empowerment piece is so important. Particularly, I always say it to clients as well. Like to retain, particularly young people, you have to empower them from the beginning, and they'll stay because they'll feel empowered constantly. And I think that is a big part of why I feel, again, even just so connected to the elephant room, because that empowerment piece of the relationship that I hold with Dan is really important. But again, like, I suppose certain things I've been nominated for, but then certain things I've definitely self-nominated. And I always encourage that as well. I tell all my friends to like self-nominate. And like I've judged quite a few things and I'll always like share with my friends and tell them to like put themselves forward and I'll reference them. Like I'm quite a big believer in that. So yeah, I'd say, and then like boards and stuff. For the boards that I sit on now.
How many boards do you sit on?
So currently I've just stopped sitting on the Creative Estuary boards. That was like recent. I currently sit on the Clark Sustainability and Global DEI board. And then I stopped sitting on the Downing Street board in probably about 2 years ago.
So he's a mid to late 20s and you're doing board positions. But I love it because it just smashes that kind of perception of board level is 60-year-old white guy that's kind of done his career, sold his business and then floating around to do that and stuff.
I mean, it's still that. It's definitely still that. But I think for some of the boards that I do sit on now, I think they value, like, I suppose, difference.
Yeah.
So it's made up of a lot of different people and voices in terms of opinion and, like, I suppose, sectors as well. So I'd say that the one active board that I sit on right now is the Clark's one. And then earlier, they created a new board for the Creative Estuary one, and then the Downing Street one hasn't been for a while. So yeah, I think they all found me as well, or approached me, I should say. Yeah.
Wow. And just going into your letter, because you talk a little bit there about younger people and empowering them from young. And you obviously talk a lot about your childhood and just some of the changes and the challenges that you went through. Yeah. How much has your childhood, and speaking from someone that lost their dad young as well, so I know how that shaped me. So I'm curious as to how some of those early experiences might have shaped that sort of perception and that, I guess, drive to empower young people so much.
I think so much. And it's funny because I only really realise how much it's impacted me now. like, I think growing up, you don't realize how much.
It's just normal, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just
your
so,
normal.
yeah, exactly, so normal. So my dad passing away, I feel like because I was so young, I suppose it's kind of like, I was sad, of course, I was sad, but I was 4, so kind of don't really know what's happening. Like, you just know your mum's crying, you're in a white little dress, and you just don't know what's going on. But then obviously you start to process it, but I don't think I processed it until probably then I got to like university. And hearing a lot of stories about other people with their dads and their relationships, and like having like just a numbness to it because not fully having that experience. But then equally as well, I mentioned Sue in my letter.
You did.
And Sue is my sister, and she is severely mentally ill. And that happened when I was 10 due to substance abuse. And again, like, don't fully understand it. You just kind of living through this turmoil of, I called it dysfunction, of like back and forth, like conversations you're overhearing, like seeing her one way then another. And that's like continued to this day. And I think all of that has contributed to me either wanting to do better and be better, or just wanting to sort of, I suppose, make sure that my mum in particular is happy, because I feel like she's also experienced quite a lot of sadness and she's had to I say mask it, but she's had to like sort of deal with it, but then raise us. So it's like, can't really confide in us because we're children. So it's like she's had to then just fight through it, that resilience, or all of those things. And I feel like a lot of that I've then got from her, because that hyper independence, that resilience, that constant need to be strong, like all of that kind of stuff, I feel like I subconsciously just picked that up from her. And vice versa with my sister as well, my eldest sister, who is incredible as well, but equally building a family, and you see what like of all the stuff that she's doing, and you just think, like, I gotta do this, like I gotta do well, like I gotta do it because my family are relying on me, or like, you know, the I gotta set an example or whatever that is. But then equally as well, I think that I had like my school and like area had quite a big impact on me as well. So I went to I grew up in a predominantly white area, and it was at the time known for like National Front. So, and that, if anyone doesn't know what that is, it's like severely racist people.
It's not just racist.
Yeah, like,
proactively racist, isn't it?
I was going to say, like, quite literally white nationalists. Like EDI, like we couldn't go outside certain times. Like it was quite scary at some points, but then you kind of, again, you start to live with it because it's just the area that you're in, and then you kind of find the people that you can talk to, and you stick with that area. And it's weird, but you navigate it in your own way. And I feel like that again had quite an impact on me in terms of like how I show up for myself, because I had so many questions to my mum about, why are these people doing this, or why is that happening? And she would explain it, but not really. And then it led me to my own research, my own conversations, and that point of discovery and understanding and learning about what was happening, which is probably why I have I suppose an interest in like social politics as well, I think. But then equally as well, I feel like on the other side, where I went to school, was predominantly like Black and Asian. Like it was like literally like a duality. And I feel like not necessarily like, oh, one was better than the other, but both of them had their challenges in terms of the types of people, the area, and you realise that it all then is a contribution of who you are and what you do and how you feel, etc. And I think growing up, I just had this constant in my head, like, I'm not going to be here forever. Like, I can't. I was never going to settle in Birmingham. Like, I already knew that I love it, but I saw so much that I feel like probably shouldn't have when I was like really young. But it actually gave me a raw desire to just fight for more and want more. And the one thing that I'm really grateful for my mum is that she never ever dimmed that. She always encouraged me, like, even if she didn't understand it, like, she always encouraged me, if I wanted more, I should go for more. Like, whether that be the university I picked or the subject or the types of things I got involved in or the dancing performances I was doing. Like, she never was like, oh, I don't really think you should. Like, it was always like, you know what, I don't know, but if you like it and it makes you happy, then go express yourself and don't stop. So I think all of those things are contributing factors to that. And then again, from my dad's perspective and like my sister getting sick and stuff, I think it just made me also realize this life's just so short. Like, so many things can happen, and it's just you just got to make it the best way you can. Do you know what I mean? And I think my mom's a really good example of that. Like, I feel like overnight, I feel like I saw her become the man of the house. Like, and by the man of the house, I mean, I remember my dad driving us everywhere. I remember my dad picking us up. And then I just remember him one day not being able to walk and like my mum having to do everything. And I was just like, what's going on? Like, we had this like wheelchair in the house. I was so confused. Like, but then I realized he was obviously just getting more sick because he died of cancer. So he was just getting more sick. And as he deteriorated, my mum had to sort of step up. So, and I remember seeing that dynamic just shift, and I realized I still hold the view today, like, you just never know. Like, anything can happen. People change, life changes, and sometimes it's no one's fault. It's just, you know, the way life turns out. And I think I've learnt that, and I think with that I've just had, I suppose, a lot of like strive to just do stuff if you feel like it, or say if you believe in it, or do you know what I mean? And I think they're really important. I think it stems a lot from all those things that I'd seen growing up. But now I can talk about it and articulate it, and also I suppose I can process it for myself. Whereas as a teenager, I didn't really know how to process it. As a sort of in my early 20s, like 20, 21, 22, didn't ever really want to talk about it. It was just something that, again, didn't really know how to articulate. But now I feel like we have a much more open environment in my family even. And it just feels a lot more safer, because now I'm like, we can talk about it.
Yeah.
We feel okay talking about it, and everyone has their ways in which they've dealt with whatever we've now gone through as a family, and we've stayed together.
Amazing.
So yeah.
And that's taking you up to now. And so what's driving you forward? What are you doing it all for now? And what does that kind of, I say end goal, but what does success look like in kind of years to come for you now?
Well, I'm pregnant. So so definitely I think I'm really excited to meet the Shannie version of a mom. Like, I don't know what she's gonna be like, but I know that now there's a real intention of like being a great mom, a great role model, like, and like just giving the best, well, hopefully giving the best absolute life to my baby. But then also I think, again, like, I didn't think that approaching 30, this is how it would be. So, and even just a year ago, again, I was in Amsterdam. So the intention wasn't even to be back so soon. But again, like, life just happens. So I think for me, and it might even sound cliche, but the goal is really to be happy and to make sure that I'm happy with the decisions what I've made. So that's what success is for me, and to make sure that I never lose that continuous spark to want more. And more could be, it doesn't necessarily have to be necessarily like work, business. It could just be from a family perspective, or, you know, how I choose to parent or learn and stuff like that. And I think I'm really excited to see that version of myself, and then to see what that then value brings to the business as well, because we're still so young as a business. So I'm still really excited to grow that and look at, I've done 6.5 years as me, early 20s, approaching 30. Now I'm going to go into my late 30s as a, I say late 30s, but I'm going to go into my 30s as a mom, but still doing the work I do. And I think that my perspective on a lot of things will be different. So I'm excited to see what that looks like.
I think it's amazing as an answer. It's not, and if I've ever asked this with people, it's, you know, I want the business to be here, sell it, exit, and live in Dubai, or you know. But what's really refreshing, and interesting about that is it's about you as a state more than anything. Actually, what does success look like in 5-10 years? It's a certain state.
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I'm big on the state of me, because I've just learned as well, like, I can't do things when I'm unhappy or stressed, or like I genuinely can't. Like, I can't do it. Like, I can't contribute. I can't bring myself to do anything if I'm in that state. So I've learned that sometimes I have to let go of like all those sort of milestones, because I do still to an extent think in that way, but I've learned that actually, what is my mind state? What is that? Where am I as a state before I then push into those spaces? And I think I learned a lot about that growing up as well, because seeing the impact of mental health from a family perspective, both from my sister, but then equally what that does from a secondary point of view, because I mean, naturally, we all have people that care about us. So when we're not happy or sick, it then affects other people either watching you and you don't really want that. So I think I'm also mindful of that as well, like making sure that when I'm in a state of happiness, my surrounding is also happy and people around me are happy. And not that I have to make sure that I'm happy for other people, but it's making sure that actually the environment I put myself in, there, to an extent, I'm also accountable for that in terms of the state that I'm in, and not necessarily, I suppose, putting myself in a quote unquote hard position because I've not thought about like how I feel or etc. And I think I try to do that a lot, reflect, reset, all that kind of stuff, because I'm aware that it doesn't just only affect me, but it also affects others as well. And I think that that's also important. So I think that's why that answer is so specific about that.
Yeah, love it.
The other thing I loved about your answer is the excitement at what comes next after a baby. I think so many people in our industries, especially women, right? I think it's less so for men, go, well, can I still do this if I have a baby? And what will that look like? And will I have to change? And I love that that's not even a question. You're like, I'm going to have this baby, it's going to be amazing. And then more amazing is going to come after it. It's not even a question. And I think that's really refreshing. And I think it's so important for our industry, especially females in our industry and the men around us, to support that, is to realise that new normals can be formed, and it's not an either or, it's a figuring out what that looks like in, you know, when life does change, because life changes for all of us. And actually we've had some brilliant guests on talking about their sort of experiences as a parent. I'm thinking about Jonathan and talking about how he had to shift, and you don't often hear that from the father's side. So I loved the fact that you were just like, bring it on, having this baby, and then there's a whole lot more to come.
Like,
which we don't doubt.
I think it will be fun. I think it'll be hard, but I think it'll be I'm just excited because I just don't know what it's gonna be. So I feel like,
yeah, amazing.
Like, here we go. Like, let's
a whole new adventure.
Yeah, exactly. And I think to your point about that, you know, women in our industry, I think that's also really true. And I've had a lot of those conversations, speaking to like new moms, speaking to moms who have got like teenagers, and speaking to women who are super senior. And I've asked all those questions, like, did you feel like you could do it? Did you feel supported? Like, how was it going back? Some people have had like 2-3 kids and then they've gone on maternity. I've got so much anxiety going on maternity. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm going to be off for so long. But actually, I think there's a beauty in talking about it, because
definitely.
I think like all my conversations have actually been quite positive. Like, and even if someone hasn't like maybe had a challenge, they've overcome it, and that's what I feel like gives me that confidence, because I'm like, of course things are going to be hard, but actually there's something that are going to be also really great.
Yeah,
like it's a natural way to be. So I think that new normal is 100%. Like I truly believe that.
The
So
power of that talking, and in terms of the advice for you. So I suppose that leads quite nicely then on in terms of the advice that you've been given and receiving and things like that, and asking for. As part of this podcast, obviously the premise of it is around that letter, but equally, what's that one piece of advice that's so good that you need to pass it on?
I think my one piece of advice would be to never underestimate yourself, because actually I think 9 times out of 10 you probably can do it, and the doubt will be there, but just move past it, because you can't look at failure as failure, but actually it's just a lesson. So I think for me that would be my number one piece of that. Don't underestimate who you are.
Love it.
Amazing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, brilliant. Love the chat. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Do you know what I loved about that chat is, one, just we were talking about this just as she was leaving, like just the serenity and calmness. There's none of this sort of aggressive ambition in there. It's this real gentle ambition, if that makes sense, and this real sense of, because I talk a lot about this to a lot of people I work with, like what does success look like? And you mentioned it really nicely, and you wrapped up really nicely in that sort of state. She has a real zenness to her that really comes across.
I'd like to think that I'm quite driven, all the rest of it, but I was just really compelled by how it's just a different type of ambition, and it doesn't take anything away from the goals,
Not at all.
even bigger and more monstrous or what have you, but the weaving in of a sense of happiness and almost this state, and people talk about state a lot, and obviously Matt did as well in our inspo sessions, but it's this incredible positioning and this non-negotiation. If it doesn't fit with this, and she talks about things that fit in with those values and stuff, it's a no. And to turn down the job that you've been working towards at the end of it because of that, I just think is so refreshing, and how confident and the confidence it takes to put yourself forward to lecture others, and to put yourself forward to mentor others, and to set up these other community-based projects when I would have thought actually in your 20s, you're still just discovering yourself.
Yeah, but I think, it came across so well, and obviously we're completely biased given what we do, but that power of the mentoring relationship, and obviously
Dan,
her and Dan and that relationship, and I sort of reflect on my own mentor relationship with Steve, and the sort of power of that, and somebody believing in you, and where that can take you when you don't know where you're going or what that looks like or how, but to have somebody else see that in you and be able to take you places you never dreamed of, like that's why we do what we do, right? That's what Elevate's all about. But the other thing I really loved is her honesty about the challenges, because I think a lot of people see Shannie and go, oh my God, you're an overnight success and I could never do that. And it's all been rosy and it's all been easy. And she talked really openly and honestly through, it wasn't always a rosy childhood in terms of the challenges she faced and the things she had to go through quite young, yet she always made the best of it, and she was looking at the lessons and taking strength from that and watching the things go on. But it was certainly not this sort of overnight success and everything's been perfect and everything's been easy, and yet she's leaned into taking the positives and finding the strength and how to take it forward. And I thought that came across really strongly as well.
And she mentioned some of these failures, and failures is quite a harsh word, but she shared this sense of, they're never failures, actually they're lessons. And I love that, and I follow that same sentiment entirely. But the fact that it's okay and to not know the end goal. And I think there's just so much pressure on this
mindset of when you leave school or even in school to what you want to be, to then going, right, that's the course you have to tread. And I don't know many that have chosen that. And she's obviously an exceptional dancer, and that was her thing for quite a while she then started writing this passion. So the fact is she's now running a successful agency. She's involved with 3 or 4 other projects, sitting on boards, 3 boards and things like that. It's amazing. And she never perhaps thought she was going to be there, but she did have vision that she was going to be something quite good, quite great even.
And we've seen that across many of the podcasts now, haven't we? That sort of path that you think that you're going down, and then being open enough to take some different paths and different directions, and that can really pay off in the end. You know, we saw it with Michael, we saw it with SJ, we've seen it again today. There's some great examples there, and I think there's so much pressure on especially younger people to have it all figured out, and it just goes to show that flexibility can really pay off. I mean, what a great conversation that was.
Yeah, really different, but incredible and refreshing in the same way. Amazing.
Elevate operates thanks to the generosity of our partners and supporters. To find out more about them, you can check them out via our website, elevateme.co. Together, we're changing lives, careers, and the events industry for the better.
This podcast was powered by Wonder, the independent specialist creative business-to-business and business-to-employee events agency. And a huge thanks goes to our producer and fellow Team Elevator, Pete Kerwood.